You might believe that transforming your reality requires months, or even years of inner work, visualization and healing. That breakthroughs are something you earn only after you've endured enough struggle. That alignment comes only after you've perfected every spiritual practice and checked every box. But what if the real shift, the true quantum leap, doesn't come through effort or time, but in a single subtle moment most people overlook? There's a hidden rhythm, nearly imperceptible, that precedes real transformation. It doesn't arrive when you try harder or push more. It happens when something within you lets go of striving, of self-doubt, of the chase. That's when the field responds. In this video, we'll explore the exact energetic frequency that initiates a quantum shift, and why your ego resists simplicity more than anything else. You'll learn the energetic tools that outweigh tactics, how to recognize the signs you're about to jump timelines, and why breakdowns are less about failure and more about sacred initiation. But first, let's talk about something you've likely felt but never fully named: the fear of ease. That moment when life begins to flow, and it scares you. When a deep inner knowing emerges, and your mind demands proof. You've felt that friction, your soul's clarity colliding with your ego's need for control. We live in a culture obsessed with struggle. Effort is idolized, complexity is praised, and if something feels too easy, we assume it can't be right. But the quantum field doesn't care how hard you work. It responds to your clarity, to the purity of your frequency, and clarity almost always lives in simplicity. The challenge is that simplicity threatens the false self, because if it's simple, then what was all the struggle for? If it's simple, what does that mean about the identity you've built around trying, fixing, proving? Simplicity strips away the drama, and when there's no more drama, there's nothing left to hide behind. This is why most people unconsciously sabotage their own shifts, not because they're broken, but because they're afraid of how quiet the truth really is. They expect lightning, they get stillness, they want fireworks. The field gives them silence, but in that silence is where the shift lives. The quantum field is always mirroring. It's not waiting for your next affirmation. It's vibrating with your current identity. And the moment you drop the need to force, and you simply become, the feedback loop changes. You stop waiting for the external to validate the internal. You stop adjusting your frequency to your circumstances. Instead, you begin to hold your tone, no matter what. This is the difference between manifesting and shifting. Manifesting often implies creating something out of lack. Shifting is becoming the version of you that already exists in another. Now. And the only thing separating you from that timeline is your frequency filter. Not time, not effort, just energy. So let me ask you, what if it's not that your shift is hard, but that it's unfamiliar? What if you've been trying to think your way into a new timeline instead of feeling your way into it? And what if the real block isn't your environment, but your attachment to complexity? In the next part of this video, we'll reveal why most people fail to stabilize their signal, and why your blind spots might be creating a static that the field can't interpret. You'll discover the hidden ways you resist resonance, and how to start broadcasting from a place the universe can finally hear. Let's keep going. Because this simplicity, it's your portal, and once you feel it, everything changes. If the quantum shift is so simple, then why do so few people experience it? Why does it feel like some invisible wall keeps you looping in the same emotional patterns, even when you know better? Why do your efforts plateau right when you think you're getting close? It's because simplicity requires something far more demanding than effort. It requires awareness, and awareness, without the safety net of complexity, can feel terrifying. When things are complicated, you can blame the tools, the method, the process. When it's simple, there's nowhere to hide. The spotlight turns inward, and you're left with one question: am I really ready to shift? Let's start with what's blocking most people from holding the right frequency: blind spots. These are not flaws, they're patterns you're too close to see, emotional reflexes you've normalized, narratives you've repeated so often, they now feel like truth. But here's the thing: The quantum field doesn't respond to what you consciously want. It responds to what you unconsciously are. So while your mind is visualizing abundance, your frequency might still be coded in scarcity, not because you're not trying, but because you've never questioned your default signal. Take a moment to feel into that. What do you broadcast when no one is watching? What's the emotional climate of your inner world when you're not doing the work? That's your real frequency. That's what the field is picking up. This is where the first true mastery skill comes in, self-awareness. And I'm not talking about journaling or daily reflection alone. I'm talking about cultivating the kind of awareness that watches your thoughts while they're happening, without judgment, without fixing. The kind of awareness that recognizes when you're reacting from survival and chooses not to collapse into it. The next shift is even harder, radical responsibility. This is where your frequency starts to clean itself. It's not about blaming yourself for everything, it's about claiming everything you're emitting, especially the parts you'd rather disown. When you shift from "why is this happening to me" to "what is this showing me about my resonance," the field starts to mirror you differently. Victimhood is loud, but incoherent. Ownership is quiet but magnetic. And then comes the skill that amplifies everything. Accountability states. These are the vibrational anchors you return to, no matter what life throws at you. Most people wait for life to validate their state, but quantum shifters hold their frequency until life has to reflect it. Accountability means showing up for your state, even when it's inconvenient, even when the evidence says you're crazy, even when you feel like nothing is moving. And finally, the most paradoxical one, detachment from perception. We are taught to judge everything. This is good. That is bad. This means I'm close. That means I failed. But what if your low moment is actually the final phase before the shift? What if what feels like a breakdown is simply your old frequency collapsing in on itself? Detachment doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you don't label. You let the experience move through you, without assigning it a verdict, because the quantum field is not linear. The darkest moment might be the exact calibration required for the light to land. You're not just learning to think differently. You're learning to hold your vibration as if it were the only truth. And that takes courage. It's easier to distract yourself with methods and mantras. It's harder to sit in stillness and admit, I've been looping because I'm still filtering life through old stories. The quantum shift isn't complex, but it's surgical. It cuts straight through illusion. It exposes the parts of you that still need chaos to feel alive. And it asks, will you finally let those pieces rest? In the next part, we'll dive deep into the moment right before the shift, that strange energetic tension that builds when your old identity begins to collapse, and your new timeline is within reach. Most people misinterpret this as failure, but if you know what to look for, you'll realize it's the threshold of your breakthrough. Stay close, because what's coming next is where the old timeline ends and your true frequency begins. There's a moment, subtle, disorienting and often misunderstood, that almost always comes right before a true quantum shift. It's the moment when the old timeline begins to loosen, but the new one hasn't anchored yet. You feel suspended, like you're standing in a hallway between two realities. The past no longer fits. The future isn't clear, and everything inside you is screaming to do something, when in truth, you're right on the edge. This space is sacred, but it doesn't feel that way. It often shows up as confusion, fatigue, misalignment, even despair. You might feel like you're failing, like the path you were so sure about suddenly vanished, like your vision is breaking down instead of coming alive. And if you don't know what's happening, you'll misread this as a sign to turn back, to shrink, to try harder, or worst of all to doubt yourself. But here's the truth, this is not a collapse. This is a calibration before any quantum jump. Your field has to let go of its current coherence pattern. Think of it like detuning from one radio station before locking into another. There's static in between. That static feels like disorientation, like emotional noise, like the impulse to run. But it's not a warning, it's a threshold. The old frequency can't hold your next chapter. That's why it feels like things are falling apart. What's really happening is this. The energy that held your old identity together is disassembling. The beliefs, habits, and energetic loops that defined who you were are losing their charge. And without that charge, your ego has nothing to grip. So it panics. It creates fear, doubt, restlessness. That's not a mistake. That's the ego trying to pull you back into the loop. This moment right before the shift is where most people quit. Not because the field says no, but because they interpret the friction as failure, instead of as the friction of transformation. The truth is, if it feels shaky, you're close. If things seem uncertain, you're almost there, because what you're really experiencing is your frequency shedding everything that no longer aligns. This is why the skill of detachment is so vital. If you judge this transitional space too soon, you'll assign it a meaning that pulls you backward. You'll call it wrong, you'll name it stuck, you'll claim it as proof that nothing is working. And the moment you do, you stabilize the old pattern again. But if you can stay centered, not in effort, but in awareness, something begins to shift under the surface. The chaos softens. The edges dissolve. You begin to feel, not force, your way forward. That's when you become magnetic, not because you're trying, but because you've stopped leaking energy in the form of resistance. Right before the shift, your nervous system is learning to hold more power. And that power doesn't come from intensity, it comes from coherence. When you choose to stay present in uncertainty without labeling it, your field organizes itself around your stillness. That's the moment the quantum responds. So what can you do in that space? Nothing in the traditional sense. This isn't the time to fix, hustle, or push. This is the time to tune. Breathe into the discomfort. Observe the stories. Soften the timeline. Your job is not to force a new reality. Your job is to become available for it. That's the real shift. Not controlling the outcome, but surrendering into the vibration that already contains it. Now we'll break down exactly how the field reads your signal, and why what you think you're emitting might not be what the field is actually receiving. We'll also explore how to clean your resonance, so you can match the life that's already waiting in the quantum. You don't need to push harder, you just need to hold your signal, even when nothing makes sense. Especially then. That's when the portal opens. That's when reality bends. And that's when your shift becomes inevitable. Let's talk about signals. You've likely heard that the quantum field responds to frequency, not words. But here's what most people don't realize. Your energy is always broadcasting, whether you mean it to or not. And what you're broadcasting isn't your intention, it's your embodiment. You can say you're ready, you can write affirmations, meditate, even visualize every detail of your dream timeline. But if underneath all of that, your signal is laced with doubt, urgency, fear, or performance, that's the true message the field is receiving. And the field, it doesn't respond to language, it mirrors resonance. So what does that really mean? It means your inner world is your only strategy. Your nervous system is the instrument that tunes your life, and coherence, that deep, unshakable alignment between thought, emotion, and state, is the key signature the quantum field listens to. Coherence doesn't require perfection, it requires presence. Think of it like tuning a radio. If you're even slightly off the station, all you get is static. You might hear a word here, a melody there, but it's fragmented, distorted. The same is true for your field. If your frequency is filled with contradiction, wanting but not believing, asking but not receiving, speaking but not feeling, your signal comes through unclear, incoherent. And incoherence gets one response from the field. Delay. This is why quantum shifting isn't about doing more. It's about cleaning the signal. And cleaning doesn't mean censoring your feelings. It means aligning them. It means owning your energy so fully that there's no split between your intention and your embodiment. But here's the catch. Most people try to force coherence. They try to think their way into a feeling. They analyze their vibration, overprocess their blocks, micromanage their inner state like a project. But coherence doesn't come from control. It comes from surrender. You can't fake resonance. You can't intellectualize your way into magnetic alignment. You feel your way there by softening into the truth of who you already are. So what creates that level of resonance? Clarity, stillness, honesty, choosing to embody what you want before it shows up, not in performance, not in delusion, but in calm certainty. This is the energetic signal the quantum field responds to. I already am, I already hold, I already resonate. Not because it's here, but because it's true. And this is where your field begins to shift, not from effort, not from striving, but from attunement. When your nervous system begins to trust your frequency, it stabilizes. And when your signal stabilizes, your external reality can finally organize around it. So here's the moment of truth. Comment. I am the shift. Let that phrase be your anchor, not as a declaration to the universe, but as a recognition of what already exists within you. Say it not to convince, but to confirm. Because when you speak from embodiment, the field listens, and when the field listens, reality moves. Now let's decode the exact mechanics of how the field mirrors you, how your attention acts as a selector, how coherence becomes a command, and why effort is the least effective way to generate change. What you'll see is this: you don't shift reality, you shift into the version of you that already lives there, and that shift, it begins now. Now that you've felt the truth of coherence and the power of resonance, it's time to explore how the quantum field actually responds. Because if you've ever wondered why some intentions seem to manifest instantly, while others float endlessly in possibility, the answer is this: the field doesn't reward desire. It reflects your dominant vibration, and that vibration is dictated by one thing: where your attention lives consistently. Let's break that down. The quantum field is infinite. Every version of you already exists in it. Every potential outcome is already encoded, waiting not to be created, but to be observed. The observer effect in quantum mechanics tells us that particles don't form into matter until they are measured, focused on, collapsed from wave into form. Which means your attention isn't just passive, it's constructive. It chooses which version of reality steps forward. This is why quantum shifting is not about controlling outcomes. It's about selecting them with your focus and stabilizing that selection with your state. Most people don't realize that their attention is fragmented. They think about abundance in the morning, worry about lack in the afternoon, and fall asleep in a fog of doubt. That's not consistency. That's a chaotic broadcast. The field doesn't punish that chaos. It just reflects it. That's why the results seem scrambled, delayed, unclear. But when your attention becomes a laser, when you learn to hold your vision without chasing it, needing it, or doubting it, something extraordinary happens. The potential timeline begins to organize around you. The people, resources, moments, and even micro-decisions align, not by effort, but by entrainment, by resonance. You're here to embody the one who shifts easily. And once you realize that, life stops being a pursuit and becomes a mirror. That's when you move through reality differently. Your energy enters the room before you do. You speak less, but are heard more. You ask less and receive more. Not because you're manipulating the field, but because you are the field in harmony with itself. This is why the masters of manifestation don't teach methods. They transmit states. They help you feel something ancient already alive within you. They don't add. They reveal. And so this is your invitation to remember what you already are, right now, in this moment. The timeline exists. The one where you are clear, calm, magnetic, certain, aligned. Not because everything around you is perfect, but because you are no longer outsourcing your frequency to your circumstances. Let this be the shift that stabilizes. Let this be the signal you return to again and again, not to perform, but to belong. And if you've made it this far, you already know this isn't just a video, it's a transmission. And something in you, something subtle but unmistakable, has already started to rearrange. If you felt it, if it resonated, if something clicked, subscribe now. Not just for the next video, but for the next version of you. This isn't just a channel, it's a frequency. And every subscriber is a signal to the field. I remember who I am. Welcome back. You've always been the shift, and now the field knows it too.